Okay, so who was in the keynote? Okay, some of the slides are similar to the keynote, so forgive me for that part, because I like them. Also, I've got to drive from this corner over here, so I'm going to try to keep this a little more casual, and I'm going to get actually into Q&A faster than I would normally would.
How's your day going?
No, it's great. It's been awesome. Could you step up to the mic, please? No, I'm just teasing. Because Olga's going to get mad at me if you don't. I run a blog, Nikipedia.com. I've written on it for 4 or 5 years. It was mostly about virtualization stuff. I'm actually starting to evolve it into being more about automation, processes, other kinds of stuff. It also doesn't look like that anymore. I'm known for some weird things. So for some people that have known me for a long time, like Trevor and a couple of guys out here that have known me for a long time in the VMware community, I'm known for weird things. Like I actually built a vSphere manager from Connect. You can actually grab VMs and move them around and do all kinds of silly stuff. I wrote a couple other tools. I wrote the Uber Align tool when I was at EMC, which allows you to align VMs at scale, inline, and do some cool stuff for like disk alignment. And I'm known for the Uber VSA, which is VMware's version of the Solera or the VNX file system that you could download as a VM and run it in your lab to test things like SRM and fun stuff like that. I'm also known for a project some people here are probably a little more familiar with, Project Razor. I was a co-creator with Tom McSweeney, who's actually back there, the Viking-looking guy in the back. That's my bro right there. We wrote that together while I was at EMC. I was at EMC, and I'm now at VMware. I work for VMware's vCloud hybrid service. So my responsibility as an architect is to help the automation team do what I talked about in the keynote before. And, but more than that, I'm a part of a really cool movement inside VMware with this hybrid cloud service to really extend what we can do for our customers in a way I think that they really haven't had yet. There hasn't been the ability to take the ubiquitous virtualization that you find in data centers and all the great tools and go to the public cloud with it in a way that works. It's been difficult to take apps that are designed for private data center and go public. And it gives us a great opportunity to do some really amazing things for you guys that I can't talk about yet, but are coming that will hopefully make your jobs a lot easier and life a lot better. But ultimately, I'm a nerd like everybody else at PuppetConf. And so most of what I do is driven from my love of technology and my effort to kind of better myself and get better at what I do. So details and contact, if you're looking to get a hold of me, there's my social media. If I don't get to your question or you want to ping me with questions about from the keynote or anything, please use my social media contact. I'm really one of those Twitter nerds, so you can reach me on Twitter pretty much any time. And if I don't respond, just keep picking at me. So, automation. So again, raise your hand if you saw the keynote. Okay. What is automation? We talked about this. It's a dumb robot. It's an evil robot. It's a Larry Ellison. Wait, no. It's Larry Ellison selling you a dumb robot. But it's more than that. And I kind of hinted about this inside of my keynote session. But the purpose of technology is not for it to stand by itself. Technology's purpose is to enable. So raise your hand right now if you consider yourself a technologist. You work with technology. You deploy, install, write, code, support, test, right? So in this audience, that's a majority. Sometimes when I've had this talk, it's not always a majority. But your job, what you do by itself has no value. Same for me. What we do is we enable amazing things. A good example that I always like to use is if you go into a hospital and you look at like one of those really sophisticated heart monitors, you find like intensive care or something. And those things are amazing pieces of technology. And the engineers behind that technology, the men and women that design that, we're doing that for a purpose, to better our lives, to protect a sick infant or a child or an older person or something, right? There's a purpose to that device which makes human life better. And the technology enabled that. And I think a lot of times as technologists, we get so obsessed, we get wrapped up with technology for technology's sake, but really what we're doing is we're actually making things possible that wouldn't be possible without us. And that's the key and the core of what our purpose is. And the funny thing about technology is technology is not easy. There are speed bumps along the way, right? There are things you hit that slow things down. If there weren't speed bumps to implementing technology and doing certain things, we wouldn't be needed. We wouldn't exist. And so there's different kinds of speed bumps. There's small speed bumps, little things, installs that are difficult, designs that are difficult. And then there's big speed bumps, like Exchange design, which can be a pain, right? And there's ones that require much effort and thought and design effort. It requires technologists to really invest. And really what our job is to flatten those speed bumps. That's where the purpose is. The road to implementing a value to humanity, something that's needed, something somebody wants, is enabled by technology. And those speed bumps that are in the way, that's our job to flatten those out and enable that technology. And what's interesting is technology also changes things. So a good example I like to use for this is this right here. So what is that a picture of? You guys aren't quiet because you already started talking, so you got to answer. What? Thank you. I like this guy. What's special? I know because I've been there. What's special about the left-hand side of those servers? What do you see on those servers? Labels. So I know that's M1S apps 01. So I assume that's probably an app server, right? So this was like 15 years ago, and this is my world. Well, 15 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, my world. And there are places where you had to go around with little labels and say, what server is that? And you had to label which server was which server because it was the rules, right? And what changed this? Can you put labels exactly which app server is on a server nowadays in a VMware environment? No, why? It's going to move, you could try, I like that. You could try, but it's going to move around because the VMware environment abstracted that. Right, exactly. But it changed that. Technology changed the way we do that. So there was this guy who a part of his job, and no offense if they used to be that guy or girl, but there was a person who had this job to make sure things were labeled right. And then one day we came with this technology and said, you know what we're going to do is we're going to abstract all your server hardware, and you'll put stuff on there, and the servers may move around. And man, I'll tell you, the first time I heard that, your servers may move around, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. What is this magic you speak of, wizard? And the funny thing about it is, though, is the person that looks at that, the person that thinks, my job is to maintain inventory and maintain labels, and I know where everything's at, that person, when they first heard about things wildly flying around in their data center, what happened to them? They were a little what? Whoa, scared. I don't know if I like that, right? Who here had a director when you first pitched vMotion to him or an IT head or a CIO who went, whoa, whoa? Because I had it. I had a CIO who thought virtualization was scary and dangerous. And I had to sell it to my own internal department. I was like, no, this is going to make us better. And that has kind of disappeared now. We accept that these are our ESXi hosts now. And our VMs live in there, and I can use my console to go look at it. But technology changed things. What's interesting, though, is there's this curve, the technology adoption lifecycle. And in this curve, there are people who recognize an innovation early on, and they adopt it. Who here has a Scott Lowe book? There's a lot of hands. So I just named some random guy. He's a very good friend of mine. He's a great person. He was a person who jumped into VMware stuff early, right? He learned it, he adapted it, and he ended up writing books that led the rest of us, including me, into what it meant and how to use it and what was important about it. And there are people who recognize technology early, and they end up turning into the leaders inside of the company, inside of the industry, inside of their region, about that technology because they recognize the value that's coming, they dive into it, they make themselves better at it, they understand the evolution and adapt to it. And I'm going to come back to this curve in a second why that's important. But the real thing is automation, getting back to automation. So how can cloud has automation? And I'm going to talk about two things that I think are critical to it, and then I'm going to come back to when I'm the curve stuff. The first thing is, and if you noticed when we talked about res in the keynote a little while ago, you have to manage your resources once you start getting up to cloud level. And if you watch and you look at the way things have evolved, that's actually already been happening. We just didn't recognize it for the same thing. Who's seen this before? Oh man, the sighs and the moans. Look at that. Oh, my brothers and sisters, we're together. We've done this. So we've done this. Do you remember doing this? Do you remember when you had to go install SQL Server 2000? And do you remember having to go on Microsoft's site to download the white paper, which had the lists of the exact Intel CPUs to buy, the memory type, the server, and you had to buy this server to go with that, right? It was exactly this. And what happened? It all changed. We come around and we insert this hypervisor in between, and all of a sudden we abstract it where Yeah, you want kind of the same stepping, and you want maybe the same model family but ultimately, the compute and the memory became kind of just a resource. It's just a pool of stuff that I'll carve up for this VM. And all of a sudden, the Microsoft white papers didn't say, go buy the Intel blah, 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 stepping this. And, you didn't have, companies paying money to Microsoft to put their name at the top of the list. It changed, right? Technology changed the way we looked at how things bind together and the importance of stuff. And so this became simpler. Compute resources and memory became simpler. Then VMware did the distributed networking stuff, which made networking simpler. But it's going to go even further. It's got to go further. And the compute, network, and storage, as just 3 base elements, have to get simpler and simpler and simpler. If you look at what VMware's doing with the Nicira acquisition, with NSX, about making routing and switching distributed and easy to update and API-able and works with multiple hypervisors, what is that doing? It's enabling. It's exactly right. And it's making it simpler. I can go into a console, I can look at all the VLANs I have, change some settings, and bloom. Everybody's got it. And it's resilient. And the management of IPs and networks becomes much, much, much simpler. And the reason this is important, so the reason we need this is the second reason why automation is important and why there's a prerequisite, is on-demand service. So if you go back, if you go back 16 years or so, I was driving from one state to another to visit a girl. And I remember I was in this junky little car, and I was trying to find my way through Louisiana. Anybody here from Louisiana? Got one. I barely raised your hand. Come on, be proud. And the roads there are interesting, especially when you start to get a little further south. And I would be driving, and I wouldn't know where I was going. And what do I have to do? I have to pull over, pull out that foldable map, laminated map, and what? First of all, where am I? Oh, I'm here, I think. Wait, no, I'm here. No, I'm here. Which bayou am I by? I had to find out where I'm at. Then I have to figure out where I want to go, right? Now, what do kids have nowadays? Where am I in the world? Oh, you're right there. Where do I want to go? Oh, you want to go right here, and here's how you get there. Instantaneous. Anywhere in the world. The interesting thing is that's changing. The technology is changing what we expect. Back then, I expected to have to do some work to find where I was in the world. I expected to have to do some work to figure out where I needed to go. I don't have to do that work anymore. My phone does it for me. And it's everywhere I go. And it's not just maps. I can get instant collection of Pink Floyd, entire collection on demand, on my phone, in my car, anywhere. And the expectations for the next generation and the current generations have changed, that technology should enable wherever I'm at exactly when I want it, and things become on demand. Imagine 10 years ago thinking about you could swipe a credit card, type a credit card into a website or link your PayPal, and in 5 seconds have access to 500 gigs of data space. Like that. That is a paradigm shift. And this is just a small consumer-grade cloud service. I mean, we're talking about the big ones, which you can do with Amazon, or which you're going to be able to do with VCHS. And so the expectation is things have to happen faster. How many of you right now in your corporation, your company, where you work, or whatever line of business you're in, you have heard somebody say, you have somebody that has an app in your company, or they say we should have an app? How many here are dealing with the word app? Mobile app, consumer app, a lot of hands, right? The reason is that momentum, that technology is demanding these things the customers have wanted. Well, guess what's going to be a problem? If I build an app and put it out there and 1,000 people sign up for it, I can handle that. But what if 300,000 people sign up for it? What do I do? How do I plan the scale on that? How do I manage that? How do I manage the on-demand service? I have people all around the world, all over the globe accessing. Mobile changes things, but not just mobile, just the idea of give me instant gratification, the on-demand service is changing the way people think. So cloud, which ultimately is what backs all that, cloud is demanding a greater scale of change. And with that greater scale of change, there has to be a new way of doing something, but there's an answer to it. There's an answer to that new greater scale of change. There's a secret to it. They don't actually allow us to manage and control and do all this. There's a secret to it. You guys know what that secret is? Come on. Somebody guess. Trevor, guess. Nope, it's you. It's us. Just because we have some tool set, it doesn't replace the human element. So I talked about Zombie being an awesome project that reduces man hours. But the word man hours is never going to leave Project Zombie. What I'm doing is effort evolution. I'm making the effort of my operations team more efficient They can do more. I'm not eliminating them. I need them. And all we're doing with automation is making ourselves as technology enablers better at doing just that. And that's what's important about it. And that's why technologies like Puppet are extremely valuable. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. And along with that, I go back to this slide. And that automation is becoming a pattern and evolution about how to do things. And there will be those who adopt it early, who dive in, and will lead for the rest of us. And those people will be the ones that teach us how to do the rest of it. And it'll eventually become mainstream. The majority will have it. There'll be late adopters. The cycle happens over and over and over again. I can point from many, many, many examples. There's a great guy out there, Simon Swardley, who does great examples of this cycle. And those that adopt this now inside your company, those that really make the effort, and it takes effort. Like you have to sit down and do it. Jez Humble can give a great example about the difference between showing somebody something and having them sit down and do it and learn it and be intimate with it. And it's important. But if you adopt this now, you make yourself more powerful to make these changes. And you make yourself more powerful to enable the things like on demand. And that's one of the reasons why I am a huge proponent of Puppet Labs. So I've never worked for Puppet Labs. I don't get any money from Puppet Labs. I don't own any Puppet Labs stock. They don't have stock. So that's easy. But anyways, I like Puppet Labs because it does a great job and because I've used it and because it's helped me in the things I've wanted to do. And I'm a firm believer in their technology. I'm a firm believer in the power behind them. But as a whole, what Puppet Labs does is a pattern. They implement a style and a pattern in a way, a piece of software that implements that. Understanding what's going on in there is actually just as important as understanding what the products are that are out there. And these are some of the things you'll see when you talk about Puppet, right? You guys are Puppet pros. This presentation was originally written for virtualization people without a lot of Puppet experience. But what's important about this is the patterns you see underneath here, abstracting how it's done from what you want. Executable documentation. So when I talked about Project Zombie earlier, there used to be a 55-page manual on building that cloud build. Guess what the manual really kind of is now? It's that Z code. This is what's going to happen. This is what we're going to do. And then you start to get to where what we want to do is the manual and what's going to happen at the same time. That's very, very important. And it's a pattern that's difficult for people to understand, but so powerful if you can implement it inside. Open source being a huge thing. I mean, so if our purpose in life is to enable with technology, if I write to a module, if I update the RabbitMQ module for my purpose, and what's your name, man?
John.
If John goes and goes, ooh, that was pretty cool what he did, but if I just do this little thing here, I get what I want. And he goes, I'll step on top of what he's done, add a little more value. Guess what I get? I get that value also. He benefits and I benefit. We both win. And that's the beauty of open source. Now, not everything can be open source. Eventually, somebody's got to get paid for writing software someday. But there's a whole community of us trying to get things done that can build on top of and have an ecosystem around some of these tools like Puppet. So you can be a Puppet Enterprise customer and then interface with the open source community. And it's one of the reasons why you'll find we have, I'm actually going to skip this one right here. It's one of the reasons why we have partnered very well with them about writing modules. We have 6 guys that write modules. We hired one, this guy, amazing guy. He's not in the room right now, Nan Luce, I'll talk about him, who's a brilliant guy. And he trained and brought up several of our guys on Type Provider, on how to write this code, on how to test it. He's been a mentor to these guys on how to write Puppet code. He's done an amazing job. And now we have a whole bunch of these guys that know how to write this stuff. And you know what we got? We started building these modules. And we took these modules, like our vServer appliance one, and we built on top of them, we added features. And we have these libraries of functionality that can be happening in Puppet that we can just keep building on. And the initial investment was a little bit rough, and then we had to write transports, and we had to do a bit of work up front. But once we got this thing built, adding to it and extending it was so much easier. And so we have this amazing base of technology. And this is a great example. I mean, if you were a VMware admin, and you deployed, who's deployed the VCSA before? Awesome. So if you deploy a VCSA, that's the screen you get at first. You got to go in there and spend about 5 minutes, typing in stuff, get it all set up, go through the wizard, and then bam, it's up. Well, we wrote a module which just point at it, and it goes from that to that. Look at it. Well, for one instance of VCSA, no big deal. I don't deal with one instance of VCSA. I deal with lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of instances of VCSA. And so if you're in the job in the industry where all of a sudden you're going to start dealing with scale, cloud demand, lots of VMs, lots of configuration, lots of settings, and more than that, you want to get lots of things done right instead of have risk of human errors all mixed inside of that, this is the way to go. And that's why we invest heavily in it. And in fact, if you look at some of our work around vShield Edge, we've got some really great stuff with vShield Edge. You can actually deploy the manager. You can deploy edges from the manager from Puppet. You can configure the edges completely through Puppet. You can change the firewall rules, the NAT rules, the NTP rules, the syslog rules, everything. So remember, I build a VMware stack that's a cloud for a customer, an on-demand service, using every single thing VMware has. And we do a whole bunch of stuff with vShield. And the libraries we use in production, the master, is the same stuff we're doing here. So we update this and maintain it. And our hope is, our dream is that the VMware community also gets involved. If you see something cool or want to update or adjust, work with us. We want to benefit you as you benefit us. And that's one of the reasons why, well, that's a given. But there's also one of the reasons why we actually open sourced a lot of our modules. And I got a small blog post, but I actually highly recommend reading Nan's blog post if you can with examples. And I highly recommend, I put the Puppet Learning VM up for people that don't know Puppet, but it's kind of a bad audience for that. Definitely go check this out. Just go to github.com/VMware. There's great Puppet modules, but there's also some really cool libraries. A lot of our Puppet modules are based off of a lib called RBVMommy, which is a Ruby abstraction library for the APIs in vSphere. And who's going to VMworld next week? Anybody? Oh, so some people are going. So at VMworld next week, Nan and I are going to do a session, and I'm not going to give away all the details, but that little list of modules will grow significantly. So at VMworld next week, because we want to put these out for you guys to look at, to maintain. But I can't emphasize enough, those modules you're looking at are the ones we use in production. We update those and maintain those on a daily basis. So I talked about Project Zombie. Again, we are aggressively trying to modernize ourselves in VCHS on automation, on best practices, working with open source, working with our community, working to build a better cloud. And as a part of that, a lot of what we do surfaces up in the rest of our organization. So the same guys that are working on the same people you would talk to about moving into the cloud know Puppet. They're learning Puppet, and they're learning our modules, and they're learning about it. So if you'll notice, when I talked to my keynote, the head of product marketing and product management came up on stage wearing a Project Zombie shirt. Because we firmly believe that if we can engage our community right with automation and development, not just inside VCHS, but let's bring some of those modules out, and on top of VCHS as well, will enable you to do some amazing things and make you better as technology enablers at your job. And that's where the real value can come out of a cloud. It's not just giving you a service, but giving you some amazing tools to do some amazing things you couldn't have done before on a service like it. I always recommend, when talking about automation, I always recommend this book. So I am an old school, I don't look as old as I am, trust me, but I'm an old school operations guy. Most of my career I was not on the vendor side. VMware and EMC was the shortest part of my career. But I've been in the trenches. I've worked in basements, literally worked in basements, in the building, the tech guys. Who watches IT Crowd? Okay, good. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? I've been that guy, right? I've been Moss. And this book is amazing to me because it really brought me back to, and I'm friends with Gene, but it brought me back to the fact that when I first started doing what I did, I loved it. But you can get beat down sometimes in technology when you lose track of what you're actually accomplishing. And I love this book because it reminds me of what I was trying to accomplish. I highly recommend reading this if you have not read it yet. So here's my in-slides. The next round of innovation has started. There will be a gap. There is a developing gap with automation that's going to fill it. So I use the word effort evolution. An important concept about evolution is competition. So 3 different animals, there's a different mutation, and one of them has an advantage. It's not guaranteed, but the odds of that advantage continuing is higher if he wins. Well, in essence, we're not really competing with each other, but technology is competing with each other. And those that developed better skills, those that developed the right tool sets to do their job and invest in themselves in automation and in technology, end up leading the rest of us. Because eventually we all follow or we get out of technology. But things have to change. Things have to get better. Evolution is a primal concept in technology. And cloud is definitely creating a gap right now because all this in-demand stuff is wanting us to do more. So we need more people that can automate across multiple domains. And with that, I'm going to switch over to questions. Any questions? No questions at all, please. You have to step up to the mic, though, or I'll get in trouble with Olga.
and I'm sure I won't get you in trouble with my question. So I've read Gene Kem's book. I read Jez Humble's book.
It's a good one too.
I follow you guys and sit next to these guys. Coming from maybe kind of similar backgrounds, hopefully aspire to be, where everybody at this conference is someday. If you look at kind of the typical kind of Windows sysadmin who then became somehow the VMware guy, and now he's like the cloud architect guy, and now he's at PuppetConf and he's VMworld. So what are your two biggest, strongest recommendations? What are actionable things that you would recommend to those people to do? Thanks.
Absolutely. Look at that! Look at that reinforcement. That's just awesome. I love that. You guys are going to talk about teamwork next, right? No. So here's the deal. So I went to college to be a developer, kind of, and then I went into infrastructure, and I forgot everything I learned. So when I started going back into automation and coding, there's a misconception that to understand automation, you have to go become a developer, and it's wrong. Believe it or not, the language you write in doesn't frickin' matter. What matters is the concept of what that is, and of opening your mind, the practices, and automation itself is pinned on a lot of key foundational items that development is on. Testing, iteration, predictability, and there's key concepts to it. So the way I always talk to virtualization administrators about what do I do next, pick a language. I highly recommend one of two, Ruby or Python. I'm not going to tell you which one. I'm more of a Ruby guy. I've hired a Python guy who turned into a Ruby guy, and now he doesn't like Python anymore. So any Python guys, I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. But they're both great languages. In fact, I would say go look at both and see which one you like better. If you're in an OpenStack environment, I highly recommend Python. If you're heavily into Puppet, I highly recommend Ruby, right? But what you need to do is you need to dive in there and start trying to solve problems with the language. Don't go to language, go get the learning VM and start going through a tutorial that does nothing that relates to you whatsoever. Cool, I created a shopping cart. I put an apple in it, I bought the apple. I'm no longer interested in this. What does that mean? Go pick something that you do, pick a language, figure out what things interact in there, and then go do stuff with what you do with that language. You could go do Power CLI, which I don't use, but it's still a very powerful language. You can go do Power CLI and learn the concepts. One of the best coders I know who's an infrastructure guy, I'm not going to mention his name because he might be in here. One of the best developers I know who's an infrastructure guy is a hardcore Power CLI user. And he writes beautiful code in Power CLI. I've seen stuff work better in his Power CLI than in a C# developer with 10 years experience. And it's got nothing to do with the language you choose, even though technically it would probably be faster than C#. But enough about that. But pick a language, pick a problem that's intimate to you, that means something to you. Solve the problem with that language. The results of that will be, oh, this does this. And next thing you know, you'll be hooked. Because what happened is, oh, I just did something that takes me an hour and I just did it in 2 minutes. Oh, I just did something that takes me 2 hours and 3 minutes. And the cool thing is, hey guys, check this out. There's another key concept, and this is less to do with technology, but as humans, even the most introverted introvert still lives on acceptance that we did something cool, right? And in technology, I think most of us got into it because we kind of have a little bit of that hero mentality, right? I want to be a hero. I want to do amazing things. It's part of what we're in this for. I'm talking about myself. When you're able to do those things and actually show that, you get feedback in positive affirmation on that, it'll feed the development of yourself into it. So that's what I recommend. Find a problem, solve it with some code. Pick your language. Any other questions? No questions? Come on, something. Doesn't have to be about technology. Go ahead. I got lots of time, so.
I actually went to, is it Nan, the other developer for
Nan.
Nan, okay. So
it's not the Indian bread, it's the other one.
Okay. So I forget, are there minimum versions of Puppet and Ruby that you have to be running in order to use the VMware open source modules?
Yes, I don't remember the exact 2.7, but basically we have compatibility for 2.7, and we're in the middle of becoming Puppet 3 compatible. But honestly, the exact ones you have to ping Nan on. He's told me, but it's obvious I forgot. But we're actually switching over to Puppet 3 compatibility. Why? So if you want to know why we're switching to Puppet 3 compatibility, Puppet 3 on Windows, we do have to do a little bit of Windows. Puppet 3 on Windows is quite awesome, and we solve some serious problems. And there's some other features we really, really like about 3. 3 is a big step up for us in a lot of features. So we're in the middle of converting over to 3, but we were doing 2.7. I can't remember the exact. Is it 2.7.1.4? I wish I remembered. I don't know. I don't have either one of the guys that would know in the room right now. I got more of my core architect dude back there. Anyways, does that help?
Yeah.
And you can actually ping me on Twitter, or if you want, you can just drop an issue and say what's the compatibility, or check the README in the GitHub page. If it's not in the README, just open an issue in the GitHub page saying, hey, I don't see where it says what version this is compatible with, and we'll add it to the README. Okay, any other questions? Well, on last days of a conference, if I ever have a session, I like to end early so you guys have more time to do things, because some of you may have flights or whatever. So I'm going to end this now about 10 minutes early. Thank you very, very, very much for your time. If you're a VMware customer, thank you for your business. Have a great day.